at Practice Momentum. If you're on LinkedIn, you can find me as Jill Woods on LinkedIn. So it would be great to connect. And then if you do have any further questions later down the line, you can find me and drop those questions to me. And I'd be very, very happy to help you and answer any questions that you've got or to point you in the direction of any information you're looking for. Right, let's kick off by talking about these principles of practice success. Now, I've been doing what I do for 10 years now, and so I have worked with hundreds and have spoken to thousands of healthcare practitioners, not all podiatrists, some osteopaths, some chiropractors, some physios, some dentists, some opticians, but there's a theme that I have seen emerged over that time where people who have got successful practices have kind of demonstrated this pattern. And I'm going to go through two of these with you. The top two I can kind of give you some steering on, some ownership and clarity. The consistency, the Kaizen and the kindness have to come from you. But I'll just quickly explain what I mean by each one of these things. Now, ownership is about stepping up and doing what I was talking about earlier, about being intentional and taking control of the things that you can control and not falling into victim mode, not falling into a situation where you're pointing the finger and blaming other people for the situation you find yourself in. If you take ownership of your life, of your career, of your practice, you put yourself in a position of strength. If it's somebody else's fault, you're powerless to change anything. But if you have ownership, you can change everything. Okay, so taking ownership is really, really important. Having real clarity about what it is you want, where you're going, who you want to work with, all of the things, the components that make up your career going forward. If you've got clarity about where you're going to be much more effective and much more efficient at getting to that place. There is always a bit of a learning curve, a bit of an up and a down, but if you can have some clarity, you might redirect, you might change course as you go along, but if start with one objective, get to that, maybe go to a different direction, but if you have some clarity, you're going to get there quicker, faster and more effective. Consistency. Without consistency, your career, without consistency, your business will be mediocre and you will struggle. You need to show up consistently. You need to be consistent in lots of different elements of your career and your business. Kaizen. I don't know how many of you have come across Kaizen. It's a Japanese ideology, and it's all about consistently making upgrades, consistently improving, small incremental upgrades and changes that you can make, tiny tweaks over time, and looking for that continual improvement, whether that's in yourself, whether that's in your clinical skills, whether that's in your business, whether that's in your finances, whatever it is, there are always little changes you can be making, and Kaizen is a very powerful tool that you can use, this approach to always looking to be improving. And finally, kindness. Now, please do not mistake kindness for charity. I am not talking here about giving things away. I'm not talking about just being generous and caring. I'm talking about doing things intentionally that are for the good of other people. Okay, you're running a business, you're going to be charging money for that business, but you can do it in such a way that it's great for you, it's great for your team and your employees, it's great for your suppliers, it's great for your patients, and it's great for the community around you. And making those intentional decisions based around what's good for other people, what's good for you, is a very powerful tool when it comes to having a successful business. Okay, so kindness is sitting at the heart of many very successful businesses. So let's just have a quick look in more detail at the first two. So ownership. I absolutely believe that you have control over your career, where it's going, and how happy you are going to be. Now, I see hundreds of practitioners, not all podiatrists, but hundreds of practitioners who have sort of lost their way, who are unhappy, disillusioned in their career. And a lot of that is because they have given away ownership. They've given away that ownership to somebody else. They point the finger at their employer. They point the finger at the government. They point the finger at the economic situation. They point the finger at so many other things, and they give away that power, because the minute you start saying it's their fault, it's his fault, it's the other person's fault, you've lost power. You can't change it. If you say, okay, there is always something in this situation that I can do, I'm going to maintain ownership. I'm going to be the person driving this thing, whether that's your career, whether that's your business, whether that's your personal life, whether that's your finances, every single element of your life, you can have some ownership of it. And today I really want to inspire you, encourage you to think differently, to challenge the status quo, because there are an awful lot of people out there who are settling for mediocre, who are settling for just being in the rut, on that treadmill, going round and round, and blaming other people, and just playing the sort of defenseless victim in a lot of elements of their life. And if you maintain that ownership, you absolutely have the power and the ability to create a career and a business and a life that you love. And I really believe that. Okay. Now, I want to just introduce you to this chap. I apologize profusely for the poor quality of this picture. I cannot believe there are no decent pictures of this guy online at all. But I want to introduce you to Paddy Lund. So Paddy Lund is a dentist from Australia. And he is inspirational and famous for thinking very radically about how he wanted to build his practice. Now, he was in a position where his practice was running his life. And this is the pattern I see over and over and over again. I'm going to teach you how to avoid this pattern. But this is a pattern, it's very, very common in healthcare practices. His practice was running his life. His patients were running his life. His staff were running his life. And he was running ragged. And he basically got himself into clinical depression. He was suicidal. He hated the thought of going into work, even though on the face of it, financially, his practice was really, really successful. Okay. And he just decided, enough. I'm going to take back ownership. His patients, his team, everybody else he'd kind of passed the buck to everybody else, and they were running his business. He took back ownership, and he decided he had to figure out a way that the practice could work for him and could help him be happy in his life. And he did this in a really radical way. Now, I still don't know to this day, I've never met the guy. I'd love to sit down and have a coffee with him, but I don't know whether this was a strategic decision or it was just a kind of off the cuff thing. But he basically one weekend went into the practice while it was all locked up, took a chainsaw, and he cut up his big bespoke reception desk. He cut up his reception desk. He took down all the signage from the outside of his premises. He locked the front door. He introduced a tea machine. You can see in this photograph, he's got tea in a little cup and saucer. He loves tea, not coffee. So he introduced delicacy teas and china cups and saucers into his practice. And he basically set about reinventing his practice so that it worked for him. And you can read his story online, go online, read his story. But basically, in the end, he managed to totally reinvent his practice to the position where he loved it. He turned it totally round to the position that you could only get an appointment to be a patient of Paddy's if you were referred by an existing patient. You couldn't phone up, you couldn't book via the website. You literally just had to be referred by a member. He effectively created this exclusive club, if you like. He almost doubled his prices. He only saw patients that he enjoyed spending time with. He basically, the patients that he had in his practice, he decided weren't his kind of people. He suggested that they went to other practices in the area. He decided, he sort of basically had the conversation and said, I am no longer the practitioner for you. Here are some other great dentists in our area. I'd highly recommend you go to those. So he basically sacked all the patients he didn't want to see anymore, and he restructured his business so that he was working much shorter hours. He was earning 3 times what most of his fellow dentists were earning, and his team never left. His staff turnover dropped to 0. Nobody wanted to leave because they loved being in this environment. They loved working in this place, and patients just ended up queuing up basically at his door to become his patient, and he absolutely loved what he did. He's since sold that practice, and he's written many books. This is one of them, Building the Happiness Centered Business. I don't know if you can see that on my little picture, but by Paddy Lund. It's a great book if you're interested in looking at the components that go together to building a practice, a clinical practice that you really love, and is based around being happy. And he now travels the world. He lives in Bali. He's moved from Australia. He lives in Bali, and he travels the world lecturing on how to build businesses. But he did it because he kind of tore down the convention and did it his way. So how did he do it? Well, he first of all believed it was possible to do things differently. He believed that he didn't have to follow the status quo. And this is one of the key messages that I want you to take away from today is you do not have to follow the status quo, okay? Believe it's possible. Believe what you really want is possible. He focused on what he calls the critical non-essentials, and he's written a whole book on the critical non-essentials. If you go to his website, you can actually download it as a PDF. And these are the tiny little things that on their own don't make a jot of difference, but added together, they make a world of difference to how happy you feel and how good your practice is and your business is. So it's things like not having a dead yucca plant in the corner of your clinic, okay? Always having a fresh living plant or a fresh bouquet of flowers or something, okay? Not taking out and rejigging all of those tiny little things that make a world of difference. So serving tea in china cups, not in plastic mugs, okay? Critical, non-essential. They're non-essential, but they're critical to building this happy, thriving practice. So have a look and check him out if you're interested. He's got, I think there's 97 critical non-essentials that he talks about. And finally, he's absolutely a disruptive thinker. He just decided he didn't need a reception desk. His receptionists were hiding behind the desk. It was creating a barrier between them and their patients. He then operated, he sold the practice now, but he started to operate a system whereby, because the door was locked, a receptionist would go, a greeter would go to the door, open the door for the patient, let the patient in, would walk them to a sitting room. They would be seated, the greeter would make them a cup of tea, they would sit with them and discuss how they've been since last time, if they've got any problems the dentist needed to talk about, to know about, and they would have, he just reinvented how a dentist practice can work. He was a real disruptive thinker, and in doing that, he was able to build this practice that he really loved. Okay, so I just want to talk to you very quickly about this. Spot the difference. I'm hoping you can see these two pictures. Okay, the picture on the left is pretty standard podiatry clinical treatment room. The picture on the right is a very atypical, okay, clinical treatment room. Now, healthcare businesses can, I'm only saying can, not are, but can be competitive. Okay, it can be competitive, but listen very carefully to what I'm going to say. It's only competitive if what you do is create a commodity. Okay, I'll say that again. It's only competitive if what you do is create a commodity. Now, a commodity is something that's easily duplicated. Something that is easily duplicated. So take a look at these two clinical treatment rooms. It's pretty obvious, I think, but the one on the left is very definitely a commodity. Anybody could go out and recreate that environment, okay, could go out and recreate that practice anywhere. But it would take an awful lot to go out and recreate this experience on the right. The one on the right is going to create a unique experience for everybody involved. The one on the left is a commodity. So I want you to really understand the difference between a commodity practice, a commodity-based practice, and a unique experience-based practice, because the two are very, very different. And when you create a commodity-based practice, usually a majority of the differentiating factors are price-based. Okay, and that is not a model you want to get into. We don't ever want you to get into a position where you're competing on price. So can you see the difference? Do you understand the difference? I can't see you, I can't hear you. I'm hoping there's some thumbs up, there's some nodding. But you need to understand,
good.
yes, thank you. You need to understand this difference between a commodity and a unique experience. If you create a commodity, there will be a lot of competition and you will be competing mostly on price. If you create a unique experience, my jolly what's-its, it's going to be a fantastic place to work. It's going to be an epic place for your patients to come, and it's going to be somewhere that's going to attract the best clinicians to come and work with you. Okay, so just keep that in mind as we go forward. Now, this looks like a very uninspiring slide. This is magnolia, okay? This is the colour that every single army house in the UK is painted on the inside, okay? The army paint all their houses magnolia. And this is the colours I have lived with for the last 20 years, which is why I carry this IKEA curtain everywhere we go and staple it to the wall to cover the magnolia. But there's a reason that every army house is magnolia, because it doesn't clash with anybody's furniture. It doesn't really offend anybody. It's easy to live with because it doesn't give you a headache. It's not bright green or purple. It's easy to get carpets and curtains that go with it. It's easy to paint, easy and cheap to paint, and it's super easy to buy magnolia paint. Okay, but all that said, there's a lot of positives going for it. But you in your practice need to create excitement. You need to draw a crowd. And if you create this magnolia practice, this is the response you're going to get. Okay, this is not what I want for you. This is not what is going to light you up and get you out of bed every morning and get you excited about being a podiatrist in private practice. You need to be looking at things that really set you on fire, things that just give you the buzz, things that really excite you, like you're feeling now about being a podiatrist. Okay, you need to maintain that for the next however many years. And one of the things that I see everywhere I go, whether that's in Australia, whether that's in the UK, we're about to move to the USA, I'm sure I'm going to see it there as well. There are carbon copy magnolia practices everywhere you go. You'll see it. They look the same, they feel the same, they might have a slightly different logo, but essentially they are the same. And I just want to make it super, super clear that those magnolia practices are a commodity. Okay, they're not a unique experience. They're something that is very easy to copy. The army have done it in hundreds of thousands of houses across the UK. And it's super easy to copy, super competitive. And this is not where I want you to be spending your time, your energy, and your money in kind of focusing on. This is not where you need to be, okay? And in the words of Coco Chanel, in order to be irreplaceable, one must always be different. Right, has anybody got any questions about that first section, this whole idea of not creating a commodity and having something that's unique? Anyone?
There's been a little bit of chat in the about sort of a little bit of interest in that you can, as a private practitioner, that you can actually discharge your patients or say that you don't want to see them,
Yes,
which is a bit, perhaps a bit of a surprise to these guys.
Okay, so this is really important and an important point to understand from a private practice perspective, and we're going to talk about this in a second. But if you have control inside private practice and building your own business, you have control over every element of that business. You have control over who works with you, which patients you see, and the environment that you work in. You absolutely have that control, and it's not a case of treating everybody that walks in the door. Okay, so we'll come on to that in a minute, and we'll dig a little bit deeper into that. And it's interesting because, and this is often why some people who go into private practice, I speak, or used to before COVID, used to speak at a lot of conferences, and a lot of students, I used to talk to a lot of podiatry students, and many of them would say to me, oh, I'm thinking about going into the NHS before I go into private practice. And I would always say to you, don't, because being in the NHS and being in private practice is a very, very different mindset, and it's very difficult to overcome. And one of the things that people struggle with is exclusion and excluding patients. If you've been working in the NHS, they also now have some quite strict criteria of who they will see. You can't always get seen in the NHS. But inside private practice, you absolutely have that control, and you can say which patients you see. So yeah, we'll come on and talk about that in a little bit more detail. Anything else, Charlotte?
The only other ones is they like the idea, they truly get in the idea of creating that experience, but a few concerns about it could be expensive to do that on the initial setup cost.
Okay, we'll talk to that as well, because there's some really great, very, very simple ways you can do these things. Okay, so yeah, brilliant. So that's great. Thank you very much. Awesome. Okay, so let's start looking at clarity. So without clarity, you are going to waste so much time, so much energy, and probably quite a bit of money. So we want to start you off being really clear on what it is you want to create. Now, you can be clear, you can be clear on what you want from life. So what do you want this practice of yours to give you? Time, money, excitement, real professional fulfillment, personal fulfillment, a community of people. What do you want from this life and this practice that you're going to create? And we're going to come and do an exercise in a minute that hopefully is going to help you with that. You need to get really clear on what your drivers are. Why are you doing this? Getting out of bed every morning and running a business is hard work, but it can be really, really rewarding. But you've got to know what your drivers are and keeping those in your mind. Why am I doing this? What is the reason that I'm doing this? Because that is what will give you kind of relight that fire, reignite that fire. If you get those days where you're feeling a bit, remember why you're doing it. What is it, the purpose behind this? You need to get clear on who your dream patient is. Can you see that's in the singular? Your dream patient. Okay, we're going to talk to that in a minute. You need to get really clear on who that person is, because then you're going to be able to create this unique experience that's really going to cater to that person. They're going to love it so much. They're going to tell all their friends. They're going to attract more of those kind of people into your practice. And that is going to be so exciting for you, because you're going to be seeing more and more of those kind of patients that you really want to see. And then you need to get clear on your messaging. What is the core message you want to say? And you'll see when large businesses advertise, McDonald's, Nike, they all have one strap line and they just repeat it over and over and over and over and over. And you need to get to that point where you're with your practice, where you've got a very, very clear message that tells people consistently what you do, what you do, what you do. Okay, so getting clear on your messaging is really important. Now, there's a great book, I don't know if any of you have read it, which is The Success Principles, written by this guy called Jack Canfield. And one of his success principles, like Success Principle 3 or something, is start with the end in mind. And that is what we are going to do. We are going to create a blueprint of exactly what you want in your practice. So what I'm going to do, we're going to take the next 11 minutes and I'm going to ask you 11 different questions. I want you, using whatever you've got around you, whether you've got a tablet or whether you've got whatever you've got, piece of paper and pencil, go old school. I want you to write down the answer to the questions that I give you. Don't overthink it. Just off the top of your head, write the first things down that come into your mind. I'm going to give you a minute to answer each question, and we're going to go through lots, not all of them, but lots of different elements of things, components that make up a private practice. And let's just start to get those wheels going and worrying about the kind of practice you would like to have. So if you are ready, we're going to start. I'm going to run my timer on my watch, on my phone, so I know what I'm doing. We are going to, the question I want to ask you is, what kind of building do you want to work in? Question 1, 1 minute, go. What kind of building do you want to work in? City centre, quiet country practice, historical building, trendy, Gucci, chrome, glass? What do you want? What kind of place do you want to work? Remember, in private practice, you can control pretty much everything. Keep writing. What do you want this building to look like, feel like? It's really hard doing this virtually because I can't see anybody and see who's looking stuck and who's writing and who's not. Somebody's humming. That's good. That sounds like a positive hum. I'm glad about that. Okay, so that's your building. Okay, next, let's think about the entrance. What do you want the entrance to look like? What kind of furniture are you going to have in there? What colour are the walls? What are you going to have on the walls? What flooring are you going to have? These are all decisions that you get to make when you're in private practice. Are you going to have a reception desk? Are you going to have comfy sofas and cups of tea? Are you going to have plants, artwork? You're going to have a fish tank. Nobody has fish tanks anymore. I always used to love going to the doctors when I was a kid because our doctor had a fish tank. Okay, time up on that one. So the next one is, what's your clinical treatment going to look like? What's that clinical space going to be like? What equipment are you going to have in there? This is your absolute dream practice. What is it going to be? I'm just looking at those pictures and pretty much all of those are fairly Magnolia. What does it smell like? I've got one client and she runs the most amazing, like, you know, these atomizer diffuser things. She runs one in her clinic and it smells divine when you walk in. Absolutely divine. What's your clinic going to smell like? Doesn't smell of cleaning fluid. It smells wonderful, like a spa, like a luxury spa. Okay, the next one is what products, so what clinical treatments are you going to provide? Now, you are being taught and have been taught at university a whole raft of podiatry skills. In private practice, you do not have to use all of them. You can pick and choose the skills that you love, that you're good at, that you get great patient outcomes from, and you can really focus in and hone those skills and become really expert in those skills. So as far as clinical treatments are concerned, what are you going to be offering your private practice? What range of skills are you going to be using? Is it about MSK? Is it about surgery? Is it about dermatology or high-risk patient management? Is it about elderly care? What kind of treatments are you going to be offering in your practice? All those ones that you're not confident in or you just don't enjoy, you absolutely do never have to do again. Okay, time up on that one. So the next one, what kind of products do you want in your practice? What kind of products do you want to be using on your patients? What kind of products do you want to be selling to support your patients? So what is your product range going to be? You don't have to have any. I suggest you do because it's a great way of giving an all-round service and means your patient doesn't have to go to the chemist or to anywhere else to get the stuff they need to carry out their treatment plan. So what are the products you're going to provide for sale in your practice? Are you just going to go organic? Are you going to go for creating your own orthotic range? Have you got a company that you've already got your eye on and think, yeah, I love those products, I'd love to be selling those or using those in my private practice? What kind of products, if you don't know any of the brands, what kind of products would you like to be using? Okay, time up on that one. The next one, what kind of sort of professional image do you want to portray? What are you going to be wearing? Are you going to be wearing branded polo shirts? Are you going to be in a suit? Are you going to be wearing dresses? What do you want to wear in order to portray your professional image in your practice? What's going to be in line with your brand? Remember, this is your dream practice. Okay, time up on that one. Next, as we were talking about before, your team. So if you've got a reception, have you got a receptionist? Have you got other practitioners? Have you got other, you're going to have a multidisciplinary practice, so it's not just going to be podiatry. You're going to have other professionals working with you. What support team are you going to have there? You're going to have somebody doing your marketing. Are you going to have, I say, specialist treatment people, other people there, and some dedicated support admin staff? What's your team going to look like? Okay, time up on the team. The next is your patients. Okay, so now that you know that you are in a position to choose which kind of patients you see, and you've decided what kind of pathologies you want to treat or which treatment modalities you'd like to use, what kind of patients are you going to be looking for in your private practice? Who are your patients? Okay, time up on your patients. So the next element, element number 9, and this is the joy of running your own business. What hours do you want to work? How many hours a week? Which days of the week are you going to be working? But you absolutely have the choice over how you work. So this morning I started work at 6 a.m. I'm going to be working through till 9 p.m. But this afternoon, I took a couple of hours off, went for a walk in the sunshine, had coffee with a neighbour, and made dinner. It's your time. You get to choose. How are you going to spend it? Do you need to be working around a family, caring for children or parents? You get to choose. Okay. Number 10, your income. How much money are you personally, this is not how much money you make in your practice, how much money are you going to be taking home each month? Remember, this is your dream, ultimate dream practice. How much are you going to be taking home each month? Is it 3,000? Is it 5,000? Is it £10,000? How much are you going to be taking home each month? Okay, and the final one that we're going to talk about is your holidays. So how many days holiday are you going to have each year? How many days are you going to be free to go and do exciting things on holiday? Okay, that was probably a simpler one to answer. So, in theory, now, on whatever medium you used, you have created a blueprint for your dream practice. And I can almost guarantee, I can't see what you've written down, obviously, but I can almost guarantee that whatever you've written, it could be 3 times better than that. Okay, people, I do this exercise a lot with clients, and people always underestimate what they can achieve. Always, 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 always. And so I want you to be excited by the prospect that the business that you have just described could be even better. Okay, be excited by what you've just written down, but excited by that understanding that whatever it is, it could be better, and that goal that you've got, that vision that you've got for that practice will evolve over time and will grow and develop and become an amazing thing that's going to pull you forward and get you out of bed every morning. Right, questions, comments, thoughts on your ideal dream practice? Anybody?
There's some interesting things in the chat. So one is they don't like, which I know because I hated them as a student as well. They don't like the white tunics in clinic. That we,
Yes.
yeah, you don't have guys. I can share with you. Mine were even worse. Mine were the old dentist ones that had like the high collar. And every time we used to lean forward to treat our patients, they used to practically strangle you. So at least yours have got V-neck. But yeah, I'm with you on that. What else? Some don't like holidays at all.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Abdi's going to be working non-stop till 67, so I'd really like to know what you're going to do once you hit 67. What's the dream afterwards?
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Chin's going to take 10 weeks holiday. I think that's a good
Yeah, I think that's pretty awesome.
Good
And
advice.
you know, the absolute truth in all of this is you can manipulate as your own business, you can manipulate any of these things to be whatever you want them to be. And that is the absolute joy and the reason that a lot of people forget when they're in practice. They have this control. And so yeah, 10 weeks, go for it. I would absolutely. Yeah. Cool. Anybody else? Or is that are we done?
You guys are usually quite chatty. I was going to say, you can,
They've gone like, whoa.
they've gone quiet, yeah.
Who is this crazy woman? Okay, right. What I'm going to suggest, we're going to start looking at the actual engineering. So how we're going to make this happen. But if you would like just to take 5 minutes to grab, or 10 minutes, let's just say 10 minutes to put the kettle on, grab a cup of something, nip to the loo, whatever you want to do. It's now, where are we at? Oh, I can't see my thing. Hang on.
So we're 10:46.
Yeah, 10:46. So if we say 5:02, if you come back at 5:02, okay, and then we'll start looking at the actual engineering of how we are going to make this happen. Is that okay?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Cool.
Joy wants to have a clinic at the back of a van.
At the back. Okay, right, Joy, you need to, if you're on Instagram, you need to follow the Outback Osteopaths. Follow the Outback Osteopaths. They have a bus that they drive around the Australian outback.
Sorry, say again.
Can
you type it in?
I'll type it.
Yeah, Outback. It's Outback Osteopaths. Chris and Mandy, they are amazing. They're doing incredible things. Their business is going through the roof, and they're running it from a bus driving around the outback in Australia.
Ooh.
Yeah, there's some inspiration for you. Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Okay, 10 minutes, I'll be back.
Okay, lovely. Thanks, Jill.